Welcome back to part 3 of our history of Nintendo 64. This time we are covering the year of 1997, a very pivotal year in the history of the N64, and one that would ultimately show Nintendo's fall to second place. So, if you happen to miss part 1 or 2 of this series, make sure to click the card right up in this area here, and let's get started. The lack of games would come to define the life of the Nintendo 64. Despite 2 amazing launches in Japan and North America, games for the console just took too long to release. After the release of Shadows of the Empire on December 3rd, 1996, a new game, NBA Hang Time, wouldn't be released until January 17th of 1997. Following NBA Hang Time, nearly another month passed before the next game, Mario Kart 64, released on February 10th, 1997. Things would start to look brighter at the end of February when 3 games released on the 28th. Unfortunately, it would be another month before another new game would be released. The game situation over in Japan was even bleaker, as no new games would release in 1997 until March. March finally saw the release of the Nintendo 64 in PAL regions including the UK, Australia, and a majority of Europe. PAL regions were also treated to a launch deserving of the system with a total of 7 games including Super Mario 64, Pilotwings 64, Wayne Gretzky's 3D Hockey, Cruisin' USA, Shadows of the Empire, FIFA 64, and Turok Dinosaur Hunter. It is worth noting here that the Nintendo 64 would further be delayed in France until September of 1997. Due to French TV standards, the system had to be slightly redesigned to accommodate. In the end, the French system would end up going to use the PAL standard, but due to the redesign, the French N64s are able to output native RGB video, which requires a semi-costly mod for the rest of us today. With the success of the PAL launch and a Japanese price cut of 8,200 yen, Nintendo was riding high on the success of their newest console. By the end of Nintendo's fiscal year ending in March, Nintendo had sold 5.8 million units worldwide. A feat made more impressive considering that in the first 16 months the PlayStation had been on the market, it had only sold 4.3 million units. Sony's console had 2 distinct advantages, however: price and game releases. By March of 1997, the PlayStation was already selling for $149.99. To remain competitive, Nintendo also dropped the price of the Nintendo 64 in North America to $149.99. A price cut so soon after the system's launch left a bad taste for many early adopters who felt cheated by the lower price point. In May of 1997, the Nintendo 64 received a price cut in the UK from £250 to £150, just 2 months after the system's launch in the region. Backlash to this price cut was so high from early adopters that Nintendo sent out compensation of the form of either Star Fox 64 or Mario Kart 64. With the N64 finally available to most of the world, everyone wanted to know when they would finally get more games. Nintendo used E3 as an opportunity to promote numerous second and third party games like GoldenEye 007, whose multiplayer mode was finally shown in full 4-player split-screen glory. Also on display by Rare were Banjo-Kazooie and an early version of Conker's Quest, which would later be reworked into Conker's Bad Fur Day. Other notable games shown included Star Fox 64, Tetrasphere, F-Zero X, Ocarina of Time, and Superman 64. Nintendo chairman Howard Lincoln also used E3 as an opportunity to let the press know that the 64 disk drive expansion was finished, but until more software was complete, it wouldn't receive a US release date. Game releases after E3 were still as sparse as before, but a couple of major titles and accessories did hit the market to help boost the N64 game library in the right direction. First up was the North American release of Star Fox 64. With this, Star Fox series fans were finally treated to a fully 3D Star Fox game, and initial sales were great. The best part of this new Star Fox journey was being able to fill every hit and bomb blast with the new Rumble Pack accessory that was packaged with each copy of the game. While many believe the Rumble Pack was just another gimmick, its impact is still felt in the industry today. Force feedback has become so synonymous with console gaming that even when Sony tried to get rid of it with the launch of the PlayStation 3 in 2006, fan demand brought about a new controller revision in 2008 to bring it back. The biggest release of 1997, and arguably one of the most important game releases for consoles of all time, came a month and a half after Star Fox 64 in the form of GoldenEye 007. GoldenEye was not the first first-person shooter game ever brought to consoles, but it was the one to prove once and for all that not only could shooters be done on a console, it could still provide a gameplay and multiplayer experience to rival that of most anything on PC at the time. GoldenEye would go on to top the best-selling games list for months after release and helped further drive N64 console sales as a result. Unfortunately, after the release of GoldenEye, games would continue to release about a month apart. The end of October finally saw the end of this trend when games finally started to release at regular weekly intervals. Sadly, most of these games are largely forgettable outside of a few hits like Extreme G and Diddy Kong Racing. Nintendo still had their annual Spaceworld trade show, renamed from Shoshinkai, to further show attendees the commitment the company had for the Nintendo 64's lacking library. The main attraction this year was the 64 disk drive. Mario Artist was on full display, and the ability to draw, create game models, and edit textures was outstanding. Another surprise was the revelation that the N64 would be getting a modem adapter to use in conjunction with the disk drive. The final highlight of the show was demos of what would become the transfer pack, showing connectivity between the Game Boy and N64. Despite the early success of the N64 launch, the system's fate for second place had already been sealed by the end of 1997. Due to the lack of releases and a library consisting of only a few hits and mostly forgettable games, Nintendo could not compete against the constant releases the PlayStation saw. To further hurt the situation, games like Mortal Kombat Mythology Sub-Zero instead helped push the "Nintendo has no good games" argument that would follow the system for the rest of its life. I hope you enjoyed this brief look back at the history of the N64 in 1997. Next time we'll be covering 1998, the year the N64 really came into its own with the many classic game releases. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you wouldn't mind sharing this video to help it gain some popularity, I would be most appreciative. As always, have a great day, and we'll see you back next video.